Hello! You rarely expect much depth from a film which genres include fantasy, comedy, and action. But exceptions do exist. This movie pretends to be a lighthearted Asian fairy tale with absurdist humor, but hides serious issues and problems behind the mask. The movie begins in a picturesque Asian coastal village. It is surrounded by cliffs covered with green, and the water is of an emerald shade. A girl named Xing sits on the pier, reciting a poem about sea creatures. Behind her, her father is gathering his gear and corrects his daughter, teasing her lightly. He says there are demons living in the water, but the child doesn't believe it. The father suggests that the girl look into the water. While she is looking closely, the father carefully dives in, swims around the pier, and suddenly jumps out of the water in a fishing net. The daughter is frightened and begins to cry, and the hapless father tries to calm her down and puts himself upside down. Only his feet stick out of the water, and the girl begins to laugh. After a while, it becomes clear that the joke has gone too far, but for some reason the father can't get back on his feet. Eventually, the water turns maroon, and the man forever disappears in the abyss. To the aid of the terrified inhabitants comes the local witcher, a demon fighter with a wooden sword. He casts a bomb into the water, uttering a mysterious spell, and a huge stingray floats to the surface with its belly up. The villagers lift it out of the water, showering the warrior with money, salted fish, and words of gratitude. But the fighter against evil spirits refuses the offerings. Not all of them, though. He takes the money and calls the fish too great of a gift, displaying incredible modesty and nobility. He says that Taoism and his desire to help the world dictate him to be generous. He then says that the demon's fate is now in the hands of the villagers. They shout loudly that the demon must be punished and killed. But suddenly a young man emerges from the crowd and reasonably points out that it is not a demon, but an ordinary stingray, a peaceful creature. It rarely attacks people, despite its big size. The guy introduces himself as a poor Buddhist monk and demon fighter named Tang Sanzang. Tong believes that the stingray has nothing to do with the demons, and that the true evil is still roaming the coastal waters. The dead fisherman's wife does not listen to the monk's arguments and begins beating him. She is joined by the rest of the locals. Eventually, Tong is tied up and hoisted into the air to his cries that the water is still not safe. But nobody listens to him, and the man who killed the stingray pushes one of the locals into the water to show that it's empty. The man resurfaces and happily announces that the danger is over. The crowd, cheering, rushes into the water. Sanzang, tied up, observes the scene. In their jubilation, the people don't notice his scream. Tong tries to warn the swimmers that something sinister is approaching them. When the monster emerges and immediately takes one of the girls to the seabed, the villagers do not understand what's going on at first, but then begin to panic and quickly row to shore. Tong tries to free himself. Questions immediately arise from the man who killed the stingray, but he assures them that he has already destroyed the real demon. One of the villagers says that the shore is safe and instantly gets pulled into the water by the monster's huge tentacle. Upon seeing this, the people scatter. The hapless demon slayer runs away with them. Panicking villagers shout that he cheated on them and demand the reward back. He parries by saying that he did kill one demon and this is already a different one. Meanwhile, a huge, sinister tentacle drags yet another local to the bottom. Tong exclaims that they must stay where they are and not move. Or better yet, pretend to be dead. People finally listen to him and try to lay low. But little girl Xing doesn't understand what's going on. She runs to her mother and starts crying. Her mother tries to make her stop, but the monster grabs the child. Miss Jin rushes to the rescue, but is unable to free her daughter. The monster grabs her by the back, and then by the hair. At first, people try to cut off her hair, but the huge fish won't let up, so they slice the tentacle. This too brings no success, and the girl disappears into the bottomless maw. The mother grabs a weapon and jumps into the water. She calls for the monster to fight, begging to return her daughter. The fish rises from the water, exposing its ugly, slippery body with small legs. It doesn't listen to the woman's pleas and devours her as well. Swimming from side to side, the monster destroys one of the platforms with people on it with its tail. A huge piece of wood tumbles down, forming a kind of seesaw, and a cradle rolls down it. The stingray hunter doesn't care about this at all. The cunning demon fighter worries only for his own skin. Tong bites through the rope, jumps and tries to grab the cradle, but the monster tilts the seesaw in its direction with its tail. Sanzang tries to summon the crook stingray hunter to his aid, but the latter decides to make a run for his life. Meanwhile, the cradle with the baby falls into the water, and the monster fish is already swimming around it. The improvised seesaw begins to spin from the monster's impact. Tong, holding on to the wily warrior, extends his arms into the water, and on another turn, saves the cradle right out of the demon's jaws. In a leap, he brings the baby to safety and gets out of the water himself. The fish doesn't give up and tries to grab the baby in a leap, but the locals knock it to the side with a stingray strike. One of them cuts the rope with a knife, and the fish in the net becomes a weapon against the real monster. Tong seizes the moment and jumps onto the watermill, which takes him up to the cradle. He reaches for the baby, but immediately rolls onto the improvised seesaw from the blow of the mighty tail. Running away from the demon, he steps onto the other side of the seesaw. The fish jumps to the end of the platform, and Tong and the child in his arms are lifted to the safety of the village's high ground. The baby is saved, but the monster remains lying on the wooden platform. Sanzang calls the stingray fighter for help, but he is not eager to expose himself to danger. He is only concerned about the expensive clothes Tong has torn. He threatens the guy with a fight, but after a violent push, they both fall to the opposite sides of the seesaw with the fish. The weight of the two demon fighters is not enough to throw the demon ashore, but the villagers pick up on the idea and start jumping wildly, trying to execute their plan to destroy the monster. This approach brings no effect, and then comes she. The chubby local madam heroically jumps onto one end of the broken platform, suspended in the air, and sends the beast into a long flight. The monster falls on the platform, exactly on the stingray fighter. All that's left of him is a hole in the wooden foundation. Looks like the job is done. The fish gradually turns into a naked man, almost like in The Terminator. The locals scream that he must be killed, but Tong volunteers to banish the demon. He lays out his instruments and begins to play his music box. The villagers expect magic to happen, but Sanzang pulls out an old book of 300 children's songs and begins to sing. The man refuses to turn good and starts beating the demon hunter. A young girl rushes out of the crowd to assist Tong. With her blows, she calms the naked man down and packs him into a special magical bag. The demonic essence flows into the ball at the bottom of the bag. The girl opens it and pulls out a fish toy. She smiles at Tong and asks if he works as a demon hunter like her. Sanzang answers affirmatively, but their methods are clearly different. Tong tries to make the demons kind, while the huntress prefers to act with force. She shows the hero a trick with a bracelet she took off her hand. The jewelry alternatively turns into a chain, then back into a bracelet. The girl does not hide the taunts and accepts the cheers of the crowd and her reward. The warrior-S tells them to turn to her if demons suddenly appear again. Upset, Tong leaves to his Buddha-like teacher. The guy tells his mentor that he has failed. He replies that he already knows. The student was facing a water demon. It turns out that the monster has a sad story. As a human, he rescued an infant from the water, but the villagers mistook him for a kidnapper and killed him. That's what had awakened the evil in him. Tong notes that his faith in children's songs is waning, and he just wants to exterminate the demons. The teacher points out that killing is not a good option. He removes a poisonous snake from a tree, breaks off its protective fangs, and releases it. Thus, he illustrates that we must remove the bad things from people's hearts and let them go. Only then will they change.
我哋要開除佢嘅魔性，留住佢嘅善性。
Sanzang is crushed by the fact that he could not save the mother and daughter. He breaks into tears, blaming himself for the deaths and saying that he is a useless and bad student. His mentor hugs him and replies that Tong is simply missing a small detail, so it's not working out yet. But he promises that with experience, his mentee will learn the limitless power of children's songs. Meanwhile, an unknown pair of lovers arrive at a building that seems empty. The girl admires her lover's appearance and is happy that they are finally alone, but he keeps asking her to stop. The couple is greeted by a man who tells them that the girl and the man have arrived at the Kibo family hotel. Immediately, He reveals a huge fryer to his guest's eyes, with flames caressing the ruddy carcasses of pigs. The host promises that many people will be coming soon and seats the couple at the table. They admire the taste of the food and the interior, especially the candlesticks with 9 candles. The girl continues to admire the appearance of her chosen one, but the guy still answers the same way and tells her to stop doing that, calling her superficial. The servant who greets them asks them about the taste of the dish and introduces the pair to the owner of the place, Lord of Meat, Ki Hong. He sits between knives and carving axes. His skin literally glistens from his beauty. The young man is handsome. He silently approaches the girl, performing his weird dance. She is fascinated and asks how Ki Hong managed to make something so delicious, but he remains silent. The girl's beloved is jealous, saying that it is impolite not to answer her questions, and tries to lead her away, but she is unwilling to leave and invites the host to the table, trying to make him talk. Lord of Meat refuses, but eventually opens his mouth. The demonic grin of his ugly teeth frightens the guests, and they try to run away. Suddenly, the candlestick turns into a rake with razor-sharp blades, and the pigs hanging over the fire turn and show their horrible insides. It turns out they are stuffed with humans. Ki Hong kills the couple using his formidable weapon with 9 sharp blades. Later, Tong walks into the same place, which is now introduced to him as the Gao family hotel. And now it's a girl who hosts him. It appears to be filled with people eating and drinking cheerfully. But Sanzang sees dead bodies. Demonic creatures are at work here, only creating an illusion of life. When he is shown the fryer, the guy immediately notices the horrible stuffing. He demands that the demon show himself. The girl who greeted him denies everything at first, and Tong tries to hit her. She stops his hand and pulls out her knuckles. Sanzang still strikes her, and the girl's face crumples like a rubber toy with the same sound. He strikes her again. Another dent appears in the girl's face, and her knuckles change to sharp metal claws. The already familiar demon warrior arrives to help our protagonist. She first beats and turns the demoness to dust, and then systematically destroys all the other inhabitants of the hotel. They too crumple like rubber toys with the sound and crumble into dust. In combat, the warrior uses her sharp bracelets, which fly in different directions and destroy Lord of Meat's henchmen. She literally rips the latter's arms and legs off. When she is finished with everyone and the bracelets are folded back into one and appear on her arm again, Ki Hong shows up as well. A fight ensues, during which the demon takes his sharp rake but gets hit in the face with the flying bracelets. A pig's snout peeks out from under his beautiful human skin, but he doesn't look defeated. Ki Hong lunges at the warrior girl and wounds her with blades in the chest, but she grabs him and turns him into a humanoid pig completely. The bracelet clenches the monster's neck. Holding the demon's hands, the girl asks Sanzang to drain his soul, which, according to legend, lives in his neck. It takes a long time for Tong to make up his mind, but he eventually does it. The demonic essence fills him, but with her kiss, the warrior girl drains the dark substance and spits it out into a special sack with the ball. The bag cannot contain the demon, and it bursts out, turning into a huge evil boar. The beast destroys the hotel and escapes, and the heroes, having also escaped its lair, get a long-awaited respite. The female warrior asks Sanzang to press the wound on her chest, and the guy becomes very embarrassed. She says that there will be a generous reward for such a demon, but Tong replies that this is not why he fights evil and is not afraid to die. She tells him about her inherited weapon, the endless flying ring, and introduces herself as Dewan. Sanzang thanks her, but Dewan closes his eyes and asks for a kiss. The monk gets embarrassed again and runs off to his teacher. The mentor laughs at his student, as if he knows exactly what has happened to him. Tong replies that the crush he has had on Dewan is just a minor love, and that he is looking for a big one. He won't settle for anything less, so flirting is not an option for him. The teacher, grinning, eats a goose leg and teaches Tong how to determine what he really wants. But unexpectedly, they are chased away by a saleswoman that the mentor has stolen the leg from. The hapless pair flee to the wall, where the demon boar is depicted. Tong wonders if the teacher knew about all of this beforehand. He tells him the legend of an ugly but kind young man who was killed with a rake by his wife and her handsome lover. They did it with a rake with 9 sharp blades, which became the weapon of the demon that the boy turned into.
誓要殺盡天下所有愛慕靚仔嘅女人。
The master sends Tong to the Monkey King, who, according to legend, is imprisoned at the foot of the Five Fingers Mountain, not far from the statue of Buddha. He must teach Sanzang the unknown secrets of fighting evil spirits. The tutor explains how to get to him, but also warns that the king is very evil and will not reveal his secrets easily. Only his knowledge and the book of children's songs can help Tong. Sanzang sets out on his journey, but is captured in the woods by bandits who say they hunt demons and those who kill evil spirits. Dewan also turns out to be their captive. On the neck of one of the bandits is a bracelet similar to the one worn by the warrioress, but larger. The bandits try to ask Tong if he hunts demons and brutally kills hostages in the process. Dewan tries to prove that Sanzang is just a music teacher and shows him a collection of children's songs, but the gang doesn't believe her. They demand proof and force the couple into intimacy. Dewan tries to help Tong take off his shirt, while Sanzang is very embarrassed and almost ready to accept death instead of a kiss. Suddenly, he notices that her tied hands are not really tied. At this point, the scheme is uncovered, and the bandits turn out to be Dewan's friends and relatives. She confesses that she did the whole thing because she liked Sanzang. He apologizes, but repeats that he is in search of great love and is not interested in anything else. Dewan says she sees Tong as the man of her dreams and wants to start a family with him, but he remains adamant and tries to leave. For this, he is imprisoned in a cage of the wagon used by the gang. Her friends try to dissuade the warrioress from pursuing Sanzang, but the girl is determined to get the guy because his thoughts are pure and all he does is not for money, but for people, and that's what's attracted her. Dewan's sister teaches her seduction skills, but the girl only knows how to take her fighting stance. Then, the girls decide to cast a spell of obedience on the Dewan, so that she repeats the movements of her mentor in love affairs. Dewan goes to Tong's dungeon, but things don't go according to the plan, and she accidentally hits him. The spell passes to Tong. Dewan runs away upset. The sister standing outside is unaware of this and resumes her dance of seduction. At this point, the guards enter the cell, and it turns out that Tong is now seducing them, for which he receives a couple of punches. At that moment, the warning system attached to the wagon goes off, and the demon boar rushes out to it. The team jumps into the wagon, propelled by the inflation of a special cushion and the blows of a sledgehammer. A chase ensues. During it, Dewan decides to ram the enemy and push Tong out so he doesn't get hit. The carriage crashes into the boar and breaks into pieces. The gang scatters away, and Sanzang runs to the warrior girl to check on her. Having forgotten about everything, the girl wakes up and is delighted that Tong cares about her. However, the wild boar continues to attack. Then other demon hunters appear in the clearing. The almighty Foot, a man with a tiny foot that enlarges when he needs to fight. A warrior beast who uses the tiger and mantis style of combat. And Prince Important, accompanied by 4 concubines. The latter notes that demons become more violent when the moon is full. A full moon is in the sky now. Tong urges everyone to join forces, but lust for profit prevents them from working in harmony. Sanzang tries to leave, saying that the girl is interfering with his path to Buddha, but Dewan wants to join him. The demon fighter asks her to return his book of children's songs. Dewan tears it up and throws it in Tong's face. Sanzang continues on his way alone. In the afternoon, he finds an old temple next to which the Monkey King is imprisoned. The Buddha tells Sanzang the way during his meditation. The rocks fold into the silhouette of the deity. At the top is an oasis of lotuses, which is where the warrior heads. Beneath a single white flower, he sees a cave and descends into it. Inside, he finds a ragged old man who happily embraces him. He introduces himself as the Monkey King, but says that in 500 years of imprisonment, he has lost his demonic appearance and evil intentions. He laments that Buddha won't let him out and won't take his seal off. He tells him that he was a simple monkey, but evasively says that he once had a disagreement with the ancient deity. which is how he earned his punishment. The king notes that he has banished the demon out of himself and studied the Buddha's sutras throughout his imprisonment. He notes that he now has only goodness within him. Tong says he needs to defeat the demon boar. The Monkey King points to the seal by the cave wall and says that it is a powerful artifact capable of killing all evil. Sanzang replies that he does not want to kill anyone, only to make them good and kind. Tong could not take such an expensive gift and recognizes in it the seal that the Buddha sealed the cave with. Then the Monkey King says he would be offended if the warrior ignored his offering and tells him his real story. It turns out that he was one of the Fruit Mountain Dozen, a brutal murderer. Tong doubts his words. He says it's impossible to kill people for days on end without literally shutting your eyes. The king tries to demonstrate his power by breaking Sanzang's edible bamboo. The bamboo remains intact, but the king's hand does not. The former demon says he wants to smash everything in the cave. But when Sanzang hands him the stinking durian fruit, he calms his fervor. However, he continues to swear and complain that Tong is not thanking him. Suddenly, the king lunges first at the seal, which hits him with fire, and then tries to jump out, but the fiery bonds push him back into the cave. Tong says that the king can do the right thing by helping him defeat the demon, and then the Buddha will see that he has changed and let him go. The king agrees and tells him that the boar must be lured away by the dance of a beautiful maiden under the full moon. Suddenly, Dewan appears in the cave and offers to help. Tong is unhappy that the warrior maiden is still chasing him, and the king is flirting with the warrior maiden. He teaches Dewan to move gracefully and beautifully to lure the boar. Tong doesn't like any of this, but he realizes that there is no other way. Dewan puts on a white dress, climbs a mountain where the full moon is shining, and begins her dance to the sound of Tong's music box. She sings a song about her lost love. The boar accepts the challenge and runs to the cave. The king lures him inside and weakens him, reducing him to the size of a piglet. Dewan captures the demon in her magic sack. This time, a toy in the shape of a small pig appears from the ball. The warrior gives this and the last demon to Tong, saying she would burn them, but trusts his peaceful ways. Dewan asks for a kiss for her help, but Sanzang refuses again. She reduces her bracelet to the size of a ring and puts it on Tong's finger, wanting to become his wife. The guy cannot remove the gift and tries to cut off his finger. He says he does not love Dewan and cannot marry her. At the last moment, she takes her bracelet and leaves Sanzang with a book of children's songs glued together in pieces. In the end, she tearfully admits that she is a bad reader, which is why she couldn't glue it together properly. The book looks more like a collection of scraps. Tong goes upstairs and sees Dewan's face in the moonlight. He is frustrated and distraught. The king seizes the moment and asks Tong to remove the lotus seal hiding the entrance to the cave to allow at least some light of the full moon to enter. Sanzang complies, but it turns out that the lotus was the very seal that restrained the demon. The oasis burns, and the king breaks free and takes on a demonic appearance. Tong kneels and praises the Buddha, clasping his hands together. The king, enraged by this, tears the hair on the young man's head until there is nothing left on it. Sanzang doesn't get up. Suddenly, demon hunters appear among the rocks. Almighty Leg, Warrior Beast, and Prince Importance. They mock the king in anticipation of a quick and easy victory. The king destroys them one by one. Dewan, who suddenly returned, is the last to challenge him, but she also loses the fight. The king mortally wounds her. Only then does Sanzang realize that he loved the girl all this time and gives her the last kiss with tears in his eyes. Tong takes her bracelet and puts it on like an engagement ring. The king throws the girl's body into the air and burns it. The ashes scatter and are illuminated by the light of the moon. The king rejoices and happily says that he has destroyed the beloved woman of the demon fighter, and the Buddha cannot help him. Tong cries, and looking at the hand with the ring, notices the book of children's songs glued together by Dewan on the ground. It has become the Sutras of the Buddha. Tong sits down, puts his hands together, and reads them. The king tries to throw stones at him, but Sanzang is surrounded as if by a shield of light. Behind him, the rocks fold into the silhouette of a Buddha, but the king breaks it and takes on the appearance of a huge gorilla. Then the Buddha puts his huge palm on it and crushes him into the ground. Suddenly, Tong and the king, already in human form, appear on a green field, in the middle of which stands a tree. Sanzang approaches the king and puts a bracelet on his head, which has taken the shape of a perfect diadem. The king hugs Tong and finds peace. Sanzang stands in front of the teacher, who asks him what he now considers big and small love. The guy replies that he now understands that the small is part of the big. He remarks that love cannot be big or small, that only by knowing pain, one can feel life, and only by knowing stubbornness, he was able to let it go. He says that our world is full of suffering and the difficulties will always be there. But in India, there are scriptures that can help people. The teacher sends him on the journey, and the traveler is accompanied by the 3 former demons, the fish, the boar, and the monkey. They will protect Sanzang from the evil that awaits him on his way. He gives Tong clothes and amulets, and then calls him a disciple of the Tripitaka Buddha. To the music from a western, the 4 wanderers walk into the sunset, to the west. The film is based on an ancient novel written during the Ming Dynasty. It dates from around 1570 and is the first representative of the heroic historical fantasy epic genre. Here, traditional Chinese folklore is intertwined with magical stories from the author himself, turning the work into almost a fairy tale. Though in the book, the main character who fights the demons is the Monkey King, while Sanzang only talks about goodness and non-resistance to evil. The novel is called both a Buddhist manual, a symbolic reflection of the people's struggle, a fairy tale, and a work about the search for truth. As always, the name of the movie is in the description of the video. In the meantime, let us know in the comments, what did you see in it? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video so that more awesome stories come out as often as possible.